So I was thinking, Umbra, if I took a shit in the realm between, would I be able to locate it the next time? Like through smell? Or would it be lost forever? I asked the question because we always spawn in the same loop. Well, I guess we'll pick this up next time. Wait a minute. What? Where? Umbra, this is my room. Did you mess up the Bifrost navigation? We were supposed to be headed for Brock's shop. Alright, hold on. I can fix this. I'm not getting us stuck in a loop here. There we go. Alright. There's Midgard. Just have to go through here. I realized that you can't go back to Jotunheim after the end credits. I was trying to get some footage for the look back, but I missed my chance. I mean, I guess keeping the Realm Tower open post-game wouldn't make sense because Odin would eventually become wise that it's back. But anyways, the journey is over, the ashes have been scattered, and the boys have now become men. Yes, that includes you too, Kratos. But before we head back home though, let's have a quick replay on our grand adventure. So, unlike previous lookbacks, I don't want to actually recap the story in full. There's tons of rich lore and stories that are associated with the realms and gods of the Norse world. I'm still going to structure this traditionally with story characters and systems. However, I want to discuss and solidify all the neat lore that is uncovered in the 9 or 8 realms, I guess. So, story. Overall, it's phenomenal, but I want to discuss the world first before the actual story, which is the journey, because there is so much epicness and grandness to the realms. From what I understand, the Norse world is composed of 9 realms, which is currently dominated by the Aesir, an ethnicity of or group of gods that hail from the realm of Asgard. Long before the events of the game, the Aesir and the Vanir, which is another group of gods from the realm of Vanaheim, clashed together in a war. However, Freya, the queen of Vanaheim, and also of the Valkyries, desired peace and married Odin, the king of Asgard, as an arranged peace proposition. It's a pretty easy to understand setting, but there's a lot of missable information and titles and facts, since most of it is either from story dialogue, which can be missed, or Mimir's tales, which are missable. Odin proves to be a very extremely cruel and cunning and cautious person. He uses the marriage as a catalyst to obtain control over all of Midgard. This includes the seizing control of Vanaheim, the Valkyries. He eliminates the giants, and he's basically almost like a knowledge addict where he's constantly searching to know everything, but it's almost like it's paranoia. I suppose sometimes after the rise of the Aesir, Kratos, Faye, and Atreus arrive in the Norse world. I'm not really sure how the passing of time or what is like the specific timeline of when they get there, because as Mimir says, time passes differently in each realm. So Faye does pass away due to circumstances unknown, and I don't think it's elaborated on, and Atreus is ignorant about both his parents' identities. I can only infer, since Kratos hails from the Greek world now, that Odin sees all. Odin knew that Kratos was a god from outside his realm, and Baldur was sent to preliminary investigate us, but the thing is that he didn't know that Faye was already deceased. Odin's target was Faye though, because Faye was the target into getting into Jotunheim. Baldur, the son of Odin, does his bidding, which we know, due to being persuaded that the cure for his curse lies in the realm of the giants. I have to say now, the first fight with Baldur, or rather the Stranger, is one of the coolest sequences I've experienced in a video game. The initial setup is incredibly engaging, and it builds a huge sense of wonder after the fight. So with the stage set, the goal of the game becomes very distinct and very obvious, to reach the highest peak in the realms and scatter Faye's ashes. The game took that literally, though, and the trials and conflicts to get there to prove to be more challenging that both Kratos and Atreus are not ready for. Now I'm going to summarize, or try my best to summarize, the rest of the journey, because it's really great to experience yourself, and I would say it's hard to explain it because it's more of a metaphorical and emotional journey than to just say, oh, this happened and this is what I think about it. So I gotta say, starting off, I love the first impression of rowing into Alfheim. The lore of this realm was so interesting to me. So it's the place of origin for all elves and even dwarves. Yet Alfheim is perpetually in a state of war where light and dark elves contest for power over the light. When sailing into the main riverbank, kind of like after that little passageway, I was blown away by how beautiful the attention of detail to the scenery was. Helheim was next, and I really liked how lore dense it was for how linear it was. Like, it's literally just a stick, like it's a line. That's all. That's the realm. We visit this realm twice for the story, and the experience is unique every time. Helheim is overwhelmed with dead souls due to Odin's imprisonment of the Valkyries. Near the bridge, there's this huge raven, and I'm not sure if this is the Raven King that is referenced in the lore markers near Freya's house, as it references it to hating gods. Perhaps the raven's presence in Helheim is the reason the living see illusions of themselves? It's actually very mysterious, and I don't actually think that Mimir elaborates on what it is, but I could be wrong. So next are the optional realms of Muspelheim and Niflheim. Muspelheim is the literal opposite topography and theme of Helheim. It's still linear, but you progress vertically instead of horizontally, and it's full of lava. Pretty simple lore for this one. The realm is home to the giant Surtur, which is a pretty popular name, and I'm pretty sure if you've played other games, even like anime games, Surtur probably does appear because it's a giant that basically is supposed to be like the leader to lead the giants towards war with the gods. So I have seen that name pop up before, and in this game as well, he hates gods, and that's basically it. But he's dead, so yeah, because all the giants are dead. But it's like he's another Jormungandr, basically. And speaking of Jormungandr, the snake's got quite the lore on him that might even predict the future events of the sequel, but I'll elaborate more on what I think of that later. And finally, there's Niflheim, the final accessible realm on our Bifrost GPS. It's pretty much an endgame system dedicated to obtaining the best gear in the game. The only lore I was able to infer from this realm was that it used to have freezing temperatures, people used to live there, and now they don't, because there's this mist. Anyways, after our travel between realms and are complete, we get our hands on all the unique items like the Unity Stone, the Black Rune, and all these other gadgets, and then until Kratos like throws Baldur into the portal. I still find that fucking hilarious. And the journey eventually does come to a very bittersweet end, where both Kratos and Atreus have a better understanding of each other. And that's it for the story. Very quick. I know, I'm trying to make these lookbacks a lot more concise, but to conclude this section, I just want to say, when I started this journey, I was anticipating a grand and epic adventure with wars and conflicts being the primary theme and setting because, well, to be honest, I do judge books by their cover. When I see a game, what is the first thing I see? I see the characters, I see some sort of background, and I see the title of the game. That's it. So that's all I have to go on. It was the same thing for Judgment. And I have to say, I was not expecting such an emotional delivery of parenting and growing pains of communication and understanding. The game's engine and graphics and the music as well, do an exemplary job at creating atmosphere, and it enriches the dialogue. I'm very glad I was able to experience this game blind, like all my games. Now on to characters, where most of my thoughts are really at. So let's begin with Kratos. First of all, there is so much to dissect here. From my understanding, Kratos is the god of war from the Greek world. Although that would traditionally be Ares, I am assuming that Kratos either killed Ares and usurped his role, or was passed the title upon death. We know that Zeus is his father, and that Kratos killed him, and I'm going to assume that Athena is his mother since she makes a cameo. My knowledge on Kratos is limited in scope as to this game's events, which I think is unique, because since I have no prior context, Kratos comes across as a very composed but exhausted individual. He has clearly been through hell, seen many wars and conflicts in the Greek world, which is why he's made his escape to the Norse world with Atreus, and is attempting to lay low in the wild woods. Interesting enough, given the dialogue in the game, it does seem that both the Greek and Norse gods are aware of each other's realm's existence. So like they know that there's like not really different timelines, but there's different types of entities of like worlds, which I find is pretty damn cool. So what I love about the theme of the game is that although Kratos is a god of war, the title of the game isn't in reference to him, but of Tyr, the Norse god of war. We learned that Tyr used his title and power to end wars instead of start them, which perhaps is the opposite of who Kratos was in the Greek world, given he killed Zeus. Tyr united the races of the Nine Realms, but ended up dying to maintain peace. I may be extrapolating, but perhaps Kratos destroyed the Greek realms and destroyed peace. This foil between Tyr and Kratos and walking Tyr's path really puts into perspective that most gods really do not care for mortals, and I love all the life lessons and how knowledgeable and resourceful Kratos is. He's a complete skeptic, opposite of Tyr, naturally, to prophecies, divine interventions, and teamwork. It's not because he doesn't believe in them, but it's because he's experienced failures from engaging in them. His explanatory style comes from lived experiences which weigh on him for his entire life. Kratos has obviously lost much, and he did have feelings back when he was a Spartan. His role model, Atreus, not his son, encapsulated the ideal warrior he wanted to become, but just like Tyr, who served others, he too lost his life in his selfless pursuit. So it's never mentioned in the game why Kratos sold his soul to a god, but it explains his lack of emotion or empathy when interacting with his son, and overall apathy to the world around him. Now that I've completed the game, it's pretty uncanny how similar Kratos is to Geralt. I've only played The Witcher 3, but the latest Steam installment does tell me a lot about the world and about Geralt himself. So Geralt is basically, he's a witcher, and as a witcher you have to go through these trials and these mutations where participants rarely ever survive in order to gain these superhuman strengths, which are able to basically become like monster hunters against these types of beasts in the wild, like wyverns or vampires. But in return for this strength, they lose their human emotion. Geralt, however, still retains a certain degree of humanity. He has friends, he has values, and he's a foster father to his daughter Ciri. And that's fascinating because despite the mutations, Geralt still has a personality that will prevent him from performing actions that go against his morals. Kratos is actually very similar to a degree as well. He sold his soul to a god, but he has the best of intentions to mentor his son Atreus to prepare him for the world. Although Kratos is much more of a poor communicator and takes on the role of a more military leader when addressing others, he does display emotion, although it's very discreet, and most of the time it's expressed as either rage or silence, which I find is very interesting. The most interesting distinction that I like, so why did I compare Kratos and Geralt, or why did I make parallels here? What I like about Kratos is that he despises his existence. And that's the coolest thing about Kratos. He acknowledges that he was born a god and that he cannot change that. He knows well the corruption of power and responsibility that comes with it. Perhaps until hearing about Tyr's deeds, Kratos has never had a positive encounter with the god, which has led him to be hopeless in all things and to trust only yourself. I'll leave it at that for the Ghost of Sparta. Anything else unsaid, I don't have enough context to extrapolate on, which is cool, because it only makes me excited to play the next titles that come to PC, or the older ones if they do as well. So, Atreus is up next, and boy does this boy have a lot of mystery to him. Son of Kratos and the giant Fae. He is born a god, but his identity is hidden from him even after the end of the game. There are still tons of questions as to what his role will become come Ragnarok, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Atreus is very mature for his age and is knowledgeable about runes and is able to learn and read new symbols as the journey progresses. I like Atreus' portrayal a lot, because it really encapsulates the behavior and wonder of a genuine child. Children observe and are influenced very easily from their environments and interactions. This comes to Kratos' surprise when Atreus has moments of frustration and dissatisfaction with his father when it comes to decision making. So the journey really does a great job of demonstrating the growing pains of raising and understanding the parent-child dynamic. It's not just with Kratos and Atreus though. Almost every single character in the game has some sort of dynamic bond with another. Brok and Sindri, Freya and Baldur, Magni and Mogi, I'm pretty sure I pronounced one of their names wrong, and even Odin and Thor. The relation between these dynamics are not the same, but they each carry their own unique depth in how they're represented. For Brok and Sindri, it's difference of opinion. For Freya and Baldur, it's difference of intent. For Magni and Mogi, I guess, it's the meaning of achievement and recognition. And as for Odin and Thor, I find this to be the most intriguing, actually, especially since they are the only two characters that are heavily involved in Midgard's history without appearing in the game. What we know of Odin is that he definitely favors his son Thor much over the other, Baldur. There are statues of him built in Midgard, and Brok and Sindri were commissioned to craft their most powerful weapon for him. I know I'm supposed to be talking about Atreus right now, but I believe that the dynamic between Odin and Thor is going to be critical as a parallel to Kratos and Atreus' relation. So, at the end of the game, Faye was going to name Atreus Loki, alongside the eerie foreshadowing that was depicted that prophesies the entire journey at the end. The only bit of information I'm pulling from my personal knowledge bank is that Loki, Atreus, is none other than Goro Akechi. It's confirmed, they're actually related. Okay, I digress. If I recall correctly though, Loki is the Wolf of Ragnarok, who brings upon the destruction of Asgard. Besides this being extremely telling of the events to come, also his first runic summon are wolves. And he even asks Kratos if he can transform into a wolf during his godhood reveal. Coincidence? I don't really think so. But anyways, it brings me back to Mimir's comments on Jormungandr. Mimir does make some interesting comments along the journey, and this big snake is an enigma itself, in that it's apparently from the future because he fought with Thor, but he was sent back in time during their battle. The crazy thing though is that Jormungandr seems to recognize Atreus, but it's impossible since we first met when he awoke in the Lake of Nine. So I can only infer that Atreus is indeed the future catalyst to the downfall of Asgard and the Aesir gods. But Odin must not be aware of this due to Kratos and Atreus being anomalies because they're outside of the Norse realm. So Odin's knowledge does not extend past that. That's at least my theory, and I was so excited in creating it because that piece of information is like, it's missable. You can just forget about it because there's so much information in the game. So as for the rest of the cast of characters, they all have their own mini arcs that I've superficially gave my comments on a couple minutes ago. Unfortunately, most characters besides Kratos and Atreus don't get too much screen time. That's okay, because I get that the main focus of our two protagonists is really what's important, and the lore markers and Mimir tales are the kind of expansion on these other personalities of the realm for interested players. So for systems, the most outstanding and impressive characteristic of this game is the absolute seamless presentation of the game's events. Just about everything besides fast traveling doesn't have a loading screen. Combat flows like a movie, from in-game cutscenes to boss battles with perfect transitions. I'll always remember how epic the first duel with Baldur was at the house and just how impactful the dialogue and sequences were. I never experienced any optimization troubles either, while I'm super surprised about because I'm running a 1060 GPU. I'm honestly very impressed that I never had any sort of optimization difficulties. Combat is super responsive and intuitive. Enemies will occasionally input read, but it's not egregious to the point where it artificially annoys me. Unless it's a revenant. Skill trees are linear and simple to understand. Almost every one learned is situationally useful for different enemies. As I played more, I learned which skill animations were the best to chain together with the smallest downtime. From what I can discern, Kratos can chain up to 4 attacks until he starts a new chain. Button hold inputs also contribute to this chain, and heavy attacks usually count as 2 of the 4 attacks during any chain. If you haven't played the game, This probably sounds like nonsense, but if you have, then you probably play with the animations enough to realize that you can create some really powerful and stylish combo strings. So since I just talked about combat, I'll indulge the gearing system real quick. First of all, there are missable equipments. You don't exactly miss much because they're lower quality items that will definitely get overshadowed once you finish the game or reach the end game. However, permanent missables are typically never an enjoyable implementation in any game, in my opinion. With that said, the game heavily promotes in-depth exploration and attention to detail, not just for puzzles, but for everything, from collectibles to lore. Equipment gains are rather generic and additive without need for much thought until you finish the game, and I like this a lot, because as an ARPG, it does not force players to prioritize grinding or gearing to fell a boss. I found God of War to be very focused toward cinematic display and having a very straightforward progression system, making it easier for players of all skill levels to engage and enjoy their success. You can also just turn the difficulty down too. Next, there's the accessories. These are the talismans, the enchantments, and the pommels. I found these items to be pretty interchangeable among their categories. Some of the effects can be pretty badass, like Realm Stop and elemental bonuses, but for the most part I ended up picking up a lot of trash enchantments. It doesn't help that the sorting function for items is way too basic, and the amount of enchantments that you can hold are seemingly infinite. This makes for a very poor system in my opinion, because it clutters optimization or build testing, because you gotta scroll through your tens of thousands of green enchantments. But one bad system doesn't mean it's all rotten. There are some very good quality of life systems in the game, such as the lost items function. Very rarely do I see games implement a safety net feature for missed resources and limited missed items. Unfortunately, this does not include missable equipment, but this does make sense because it would be obviously too much of a handout for the game to just give you everything, which would naturally devalue exploration. So what about exploration? Well, the Norse world is actually quite small. With Midgard being the main hub, most of the other explorable realms are rather sequential and linear in scope. I did enjoy the endgame and NG Plus experience with the introduction of perfect gear and the Surtur trials being great ways to test new builds. The only addition I would add is to have the option to fight the Valkyries and story bosses again. It's a bit of a missed opportunity to have the hidden Muspelheim trials include these fights. And finally, the last thing for this look back, we are making amazing time for this one. My biggest gripe in the game is that the acquisition of items is annoying. And listen, I don't need to be formally informed every time I pick up a rare resource. Just keep the fancy animations for equipment, since it can describe the effects. This isn't actually a big gripe, I'm just exaggerating here, but it does get progressively time consuming, especially in NG+, when I'm picking up my 100th scap slag and I have to wait for the box animation to disappear, and it takes up 5 seconds when I gotta loot a boss or something. And that's all I gotta say. I thoroughly enjoyed the story and gameplay from start to finish. I wish we could have had a playable controlled boy Atreus, but I'll settle for him being a really good support character in combat and a fantastic protagonist with his Nista and Numa. Alright, Umbra, don't mess up the Bifrost navigation this time. Which realm are we traveling to next? That's the one, right. Tatsumi Port Island.